What's going on, you guys? TBR here, back yet again with another King of Fighters All-Star video. And in today's video, we are going to be breaking down the October 28th update, which brought along with it a lot less than a lot of you might think. Yeah, that's right, that's what we get for not giving Netmarble the benefit of the doubt in that update notice. And we are also going to be taking a look at the newest banner to be added into the game that features, of course, SS King and SS Yuri, and letting you guys know our initial knee-jerk reactions to these characters that have been out now, I don't know, a whole hour, half hour. But anyway, you guys, before we get into all of that and more, if you're new here to the channel and you enjoy daily King of Fighters All-Star content such as this, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe, and let's go ahead and get into the update. Now, before we get into what was actually added into the game today, let's talk about something real quick. Now, this is something that I had briefly touched on at the beginning of yesterday's video, breaking down the dev notices that were over on the official forums, but I had mentioned that there were some odd dates that were listed in there, and that I was going to be operating under the assumption that it was Netmarble doing Netmarble things, and having the wrong dates listed on there, as they like to do with a lot of these update notices and messing up a lot of the nitty-gritty details. Well, as it looks right now, that was actually incorrect, and it looks like they had actually put the right dates on there. So for those of you who are wondering where a lot of this stuff is, including the Rush Dungeon and some of these other events that they had mentioned in there, this is the first time they have ever done this, so this is a new precedent. Going forward, this could be something that we start seeing more of, but Netmarble actually gave us dev notes on stuff that they were not planning to release for several days. So it looks like we aren't going to be seeing that stuff until after this Halloween event stuff goes away. So as you guys can see here, all of these Halloween events have 3 days left. They are scheduled to leave on Halloween evening, and so therefore that appears to be when we will be seeing things such as that new Rush Dungeon and some of these other new events. So for those of you who are wondering where all that stuff is, all of those original dates that are over in the official forum on that dev notice, yeah, sounds like that stuff was correct. So we have actually a very brief update to go over today. There isn't as much as I was thinking there was going to be, which is good for me because I just want to get to summoning. So we're going to go ahead and talk about what was actually in here. But for those of you wondering, yes, the rest of the stuff in this update will not be here until it appears Sunday. So again, keep in mind, this is a new precedent. If going forward, this tends to be what they like to do with these update notices, that'd be pretty interesting. We usually, whenever they give us an update notice, we see everything they're talking about within 24 to 48 hours. And yeah, this is different for them. So we're just going to go with it. And yeah, let's go ahead and get into what we actually got, though, because we did get some stuff in here besides the banner, and it is actually going to be pretty welcome changes, including this tab right here. So as you guys can see, Netmarble has finally gotten around to giving us a IMPRINT stone tab on the main menu that can allow us to go in and easily access all of our different imprint stones, including the salvage system, as well as the ability to sell these things in here. So this is a very nice quality of life change, whereas before we did have a very counterintuitive system if we wanted to go ahead and salvage these things out for different resources, or we wanted to go in and build up our stones or sort through our stones. It was very cumbersome. Now we have a very well laid out and detailed menu that is going to be a major quality of life upgrade, and I'm very happy to see this. So this is something that arguably should have been in the game months ago, even when they originally debuted the imprint stone mechanic. One could argue that this is something that should have probably been added in with that, but hey, beggars can't be choosers, and better late than never. But I love to see this. This is the type of stuff we need more of, and this is a really nice menu. So definitely check this out, you guys. This is going to make your lives a whole heck of a lot easier, and I love this part of this update. Now, next up, if you guys go over to your Challenge Dungeon tab, you will notice that DEIMOS base has been added over here to the menu. However, if you tap on it right now, you cannot enter it. So I'm wondering if later on in the next couple of hours, this thing will be available. I'm assuming so, if we are going by the fact that those dev notes were now correct with all of their dates. However, as of right now, there's nothing for me to report because I cannot get into it, but it is there. This is a mode that we are going to be doing a video dedicated dedicated to it once it goes live, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. I was only going to give you guys a brief overview in today's video anyway, but considering the fact that right now it is not available to play, we're just going to go ahead and move on. But it is always nice to see a new game mode added. Jury's still out on whether or not it is going to be as good as it looks on paper, but chances are this is going to be a major addition to the game and something that people are going to get a lot of use out of, but time will tell. Next up here, talking about the in-game packages. For all of you guys out there who are wondering, none of these packages have changed from what we normally have come to expect around these limited banners, so this should be a pretty easy and brief overview. But basically, if you're a whale or somebody who is planning on spending a lot on a banner like this, these are always going to be the best possible option for a package as far as bang for your buck, because these are going to offer the most value for the money. If you're somebody that is more of a dolphin, of course this is going to be the option that you want to go with. And then if you are going to be a minnow, this is going to be your best option here. However, my argument is always, if you are a minnow and you are planning on spending any money on this banner or any of these banners in general, that you might decide to just skip these and just go ahead and pick one of these up instead, because the value proposition there for the money is much better. But it's up to you. In general though, these are always going to be the best, and then this guy here is definitely going to be worth it for the money. And then if you're really on a budget, this is the way to go. But overall, pretty standard stuff with the packages, so we can go ahead and move on. Next up, we have the friendly match system upgrades, and basically if you guys take a look down here at the bottom, you are going to now be able to adjust all of these different settings in your friendly match system before your games if you are the host. So these are going to be new options that are going to be available if you're hosting. This is going to be something that is a huge deal for this game that a lot of people might overlook, but basically what this means is this is going to be big for people out there like myself who are YouTubers who want to play more games in Championship with some of their subscribers or just their followers in general. This is also going to help Championship players out there who are trying to train or spar together to be able to more easily change the settings and change the actual rules of their fights. So this is going to be really, really nice, whereas before it was very counterintuitive. You were having to go in and actually manually remove things like your imprint stones, your cards, or so on and so forth, or whatever it was you were trying to do to even the playing field in whatever battle you were doing. Now you can go in here and you can actually change all of this stuff from the menu settings. So this is really, really cool. Again, I think that this is going to be an unsung hero of this update. I think there's a lot of players out there that have been begging for a change or a quality of life change to friendly match like this. So this is going to be huge for them. Congratulations to all my Championship peeps out there who are loving this type of stuff. This is something I know a lot of you guys have been excited for, so I hope you all enjoy it. But I do think that this is going to be a massive upgrade for everybody who enjoys Championship or just enjoys PvP in general. Alright you guys, so that pretty much does it for the in-game event updates. Now we are going to go ahead and segue over to the newest banner that is going to feature SS King and SS Yuri, as well as the new card banner. Now first, before we talk about them, I do want to mention that they did go ahead and bring back Special Signature Volume 2 for a rerun, so you do have a second chance at not only the characters but also the cards. My opinion as far as this is concerned, of course everybody is aware that you cannot get the stones with these characters for awakening them whenever we have reruns, which is going to hurt the characters in a big way if you do not have a lot of the other special signature stones available to put on them to replace those. So that is a big deal. Now for those of you who are wondering, SS Kyo is one of the best characters in the game. He is an absolute DPS monster and he is just built rock solid. And then with Yuri is kind of more of a middle of the road SS character. However, I would argue that he's actually one that gets a lot more crap than he actually deserves. So in general, this is a really good banner. However, I would say if it would have come out a couple of months ago as a rerun, that would have been the time to pull on it. For now though, I think that you want to skip this. I don't think that this is necessarily worth the rubies nowadays. I think you'd be better off going for maybe this newest banner, not gonna lie. But another thing that you need to keep in mind right now, especially especially as it pertains to these reruns, is we are more than likely going to be due a new collaboration here in the next month or month and a half. So if you guys have that in mind, or if that's something that you are concerned about, that is just another reason why you shouldn't pull here. And when it comes to the cards, if you plan on pulling for the characters, you have to have their finishers. Both of these finishers for both of these characters are insane, and if you are getting these characters, you have to have these. But at the same time, I still don't think that you should be going for them. The Gears of Fate set is a wonderful set, but again, I don't think it is something that you necessarily need, especially since the use case scenarios for it are fairly low by comparison to other card sets in the game. And then that option card is really good as well, but it's another option card that largely I think you can go ahead and skip, and you wouldn't be missing out on a whole lot. So in general, you guys, I think that this is a skip here, unless you just need like 1 or 2 more memories to finish off a character. At that point, that's up to you, but I would say just skip this. And if you're looking to pull on a banner, more than likely you'll want to take your attention and move it over here, because as we're about to establish, both of these characters, they look really, really solid. So let's go ahead and talk about them. Now, before we talk about the 2 characters that we have added in with this newest banner, I do want to go ahead and start off with the cards, because this should be a fairly quick overview with these, considering the fact that we actually had a little bit of a cut, copy, paste job done here. So this is going to be the newest card set, the commemorative photo set. As you guys can see, this is going to be the effect here, and if it looks like it is familiar to you, that's because it should be, because we just had the Akari set with the Boss Syndrome Volume 4 banner, and this is literally basically just a exact replica of that. Now, that isn't necessarily a bad thing, considering the fact that the Akari set was actually really, really good, but it's up to you guys if you want this one. Obviously, the biggest difference is going to be that whereas the Akari team set was going to be for Boss Syndrome characters, this one's going to be for your special signature fighters. Now, with the Akari set, it ended up being a really, really good set for specific characters, especially characters that were going to be more based around blast skills. But it's up to you if you want to go for this. I would say that this is a card set that you could easily skip and not be in too bad of a spot. I don't think that this is a card set that is a must-have. However, it is going to end up being a really solid one, and eventually if we end up getting special signature fighters that are going to be based solely upon blast skills, this could end up being really good for them. But as it sits right now, this is going to be a super solid card set, one that would be really good if you had it. Kind of one of those situations where it'd be nice to have it, but if you don't end up getting it, it's not going to be the end of the world type thing. So that's pretty much where I'm at with this thing. In general, that's where I'm at with a lot of these cards. So speaking of the special people option card, this one's actually going to be pretty decent. This one's going to increase your attack by 5%. It's going to decrease your skill cooldowns by 1.2 seconds. And then it is going to increase special signature fighters' critical damage by 20%. So if this would have had critical rate on it, I'd have been like, okay, this is a must-have. But as it sits right now, this is just a solid option card. I don't think it's one that you have to have. It is a card that I definitely want. I would like to have at least 1 copy so I could test it out on specific characters. But I definitely want it because of the art as well, because I mean, shoot, we established in the opening of yesterday's video that this is an homage to the art for the ending of the King of Fighters 98. So this is something that I personally as a fan really, really like, but at the same time, I am also going to heed that this isn't necessarily, in my opinion, a must-have, especially when you consider the fact that if you're one of those people that's just chasing CP boosts, typically you want to see crit rate for that. So while this isn't a bad option card by any stretch of the imagination, it's actually very solid. I would say that if you can't get it or you don't want to go in on it, you aren't going to be missing out on anything that you're going to be kicking yourself over later. So moving on now, we'll talk about the finishers. Now when it comes to these finishers, they are going to have the same effect on each one for both of these characters respectively. Now of course they are 3PG finishers, and they are going to increase the attack by 10% and the penetration by 400 for 10 seconds when using them. So as you guys can see, both of these are going to be the exact same. So good stuff overall. You always like to see these bonus effects on these finisher cards for these characters. It's pretty much become a common thing that Netmarble likes to do with all of these limited banners. So this time around, real solid. You're getting some extra attack, you're getting some more penetration. So in general, you can never have too much of either, and that is going to be a must-have for either of these characters if you're planning on pulling. But speaking of whether you're planning on pulling, let's decide whether or not you should. Now, you guys all know me. I'm about to be going real hard after I record this video, but let's talk about why these characters are good. Now, leading off here, we're going to go ahead and start with Yuri. So SS Yuri is going to be a green attack type with a leadership ability that increases all starfighters' attack by 45% and their power charge rate by 20%. In general, this is an amazing leadership ability that is going to leave her as being one of the best overall leaders in the game for specific game modes, and is also going to give her a lot of flexibility. As a green attack type, it isn't necessarily a typing that is specifically called for a lot of things. However, you always like to see attack types because they're generally going to fit into a lot of teams very well. So in general, Yuri is going to be a wonderful character in both of these respects, and overall that leadership ability is amazing. So moving on now, we're going to talk about the cores. As you guys can see right off the bat, she is going to boast that amazing 30% power charge rate increase, which both of these characters are going to have on their kits, which is always a great start. If we take a look at her exclusive cores, she is going to deal burn damage equal to 70% of attack every 1 second for 3 seconds upon landing an attack. Amazing core. You always like to see that on these characters. We have seen this a lot in the past, and it is always going to bode well for their overall DPS. And then she's also going to be able to remove super or hyper armor from the attacker and gain hyper armor for 3 seconds when attacked by an enemy with super or hyper armor on a cooldown of 15 seconds. So this is really good, especially for things like PvP. Not necessarily something that you're probably going to find yourself finding very useful in PvE, but still a wonderful overall core for her for PvP, which a lot of people are going to be looking at her for. So that is something that you definitely like to see on these kits. Next up, we have the final core, which is going to give her that shield. Now, this is going to cast the shield that absorbs damage for 7 seconds when she's attacked if her HP is 50% or more, and she removes the shield when she's attacked 20 times on a cooldown of 15 seconds. And then we have the special signature volume 4 exclusive core, which this time around, as we've seen in the past, you are going to gain 1.4% power every 0.4 seconds when in guard, and decrease your damage received by 70% for 3 seconds when your accumulated attacks received, guard included, reaches 5 times on a cooldown of 20 seconds. This is a massive damage dampen to your characters. This is going to help you out a lot whenever you are getting juggled. You really like to see that there. And then that power gain upon your guard is something we have seen a ton of. So in general, these cores are super solid, and this character is looking like she is going to be very, very strong. So with all of that out of the way now, let's go ahead and move over to the skills. So first up here, we are going to have the new charge skill on the S1. Now, while you are charging, you are going to apply super armor to your character to give them a little bit of protection while they're charging. However, with this new mechanic, my assumption would be, and I am reserving judgment on anything like this until I've actually had a chance to play it in-game myself, but my assumption would be that generally you're not going to be using the actual charged version of these skills very often outside of your awakening rotation, but time will tell. However, it is going to be nice that they did give us that super armor while we're charging in order to give us a little bit of extra added protection. Now, the uncharged version of this skill is going to increase your target's damage received by 20% for 7 seconds upon landing a skill, and you're also going to deal additional damage equal to 400% of attack upon landing it. And then the fully charged version is going to increase the target's damage received by 30% for 7 seconds upon landing a skill, and deal additional damage equal to 600% of attack upon landing it, and increasing your penetration by 1500 for 7 seconds. So as I've said leading up to the release of these characters, I felt like the awakening spam with these charge skills was going to be the bread and butter for these. That's going to be where they're going to stand out, and now I can definitely see that being the case. This is going to be a fantastic skill to spam out there when you're awakened, so time will tell, but this looks really solid on your awakening, and I think in general this charge mechanic is going to end up being low-key really, really good. But again, I don't have any hands-on experience yet. That'll change very soon, so stay tuned. So next up here on the S2, she is going to use this to increase her attack by 35% for 7 seconds, with a 70% chance to remove the target's super or hyper armor upon landing a hit on a target with either of those. So in general, a really good little skill, mostly going to be pertinent to PvP, but still pretty solid nonetheless. Then if we move on here to the S3, this is going to be our source of hyper armor. It's also going to be where we get our burn, which we are going to deal burn damage equal to 3.8 times the remaining burn damage and remove burn status upon landing a hit. So this is going to be our burn explosion. Pretty interesting stuff. We have burn explosion on the kit. It isn't something you can necessarily control, like if you had it on, for instance, one of your finishers like we saw with BS Leona. So not necessarily something you love to see. But then again, she is going to have that interrupt with hyper armor on the same skill, and you can do that while airborne. So yeah, I mean, it's not a bad skill. It's one of her best skills, but the problem is you don't necessarily like to see explosion, especially for things such as Guild Raid. But then again, considering the fact that we are not for burn options in the game, chances are you already have other options for burn in Guild Raid if you really need the help. So I don't really necessarily think it's a huge deal, but it is something to take note of. And then finally down here on the core finisher, she is going to gain 15% power and increase her attack by 15% for 10 seconds upon using it. So in general, really solid overall. I think this character is really good. Time will tell how good she will be. Again, we have only had an hour or two to even look at these kits, so I'm going to reserve judgment, but I do think that she is looking pretty solid overall. So that is going to be SS Yuri. Next up, let's talk about my lady, SS King. So SS King is going to be a yellow balance type with a leadership ability that increases yellow element fighters' attack by 65%. An amazing leadership ability. This is going to be wonderful for all of your yellow type characters. You like to see power charge on there for a lot of these leadership abilities, but anytime you have anything over 55 or 60% for your increase to your attack, yeah, it makes up for it. So that's quite a bit of damage, especially in things such as Guild Raid, and you guys are going to find a theme with King. Damage is the name of her game. Now, as a yellow balance type, not necessarily the worst thing in the world, but not necessarily the greatest thing either. It's one of those typings that's kind of just there, but at the same time, not necessarily that big of a deal, especially when you consider that she is an SS fighter with all these different tags. She's going to be able to slot in with a ton of different teams, so it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. Now, when we take a look at the cores, as I mentioned, both of these characters are going to have that 30% power charge rate increase. But when we take a look here at her exclusive cores, this is where things start to get really interesting. So first up here, we have the increase to our active skill damage dealt to enemies affected by darkness by 120%. That is a nice amount right there, right off the bat. We also have a 30% chance to deal additional damage equal to 700% of our attack upon landing an attack, guard included, on a cooldown of 13 seconds. Yeah, King likes to do damage. Then we also have a 70% chance to remove a shield from the target upon landing an active skill on a cooldown of 15 seconds. This is going to be huge for PvP, where the shield is a monster in the meta and is one of the most annoying things for championship players. She is going to be, to my knowledge, the first character that can full-on remove it, so that is going to be huge for that meta. King is offering something that nobody else really can right now, and I definitely think that she is going to be a character that is going to make waves there in a huge way. Now, next up, we have the Women Fighters Leader. This is going to reset our strike active skill cooldowns upon landing Tornado Kick combo and increases the target's damage received by 30% for 5 seconds on a cooldown of 13 seconds. And then we have already established what the special signature volume 4 core is. So in general, King, character that just wants to do damage. She's going to have a full-on reset down there, which is going to be really nice for all of her strike actives, which we'll get to momentarily. But in general, as a character who has a core that at this point is going to be exclusive to her until they start giving it to more characters, that is going to be a big deal, like I mentioned, for championship. And in general, her cores are extremely good, and it only gets better when we get over to the skills. So let's take a look at those. So moving on to the skills here, you guys are going to see again when you're charging, you're going to get that super armor. And then for the unfully charged version of this thing, you are going to get an increase to the target's damage received by 25% for 7 seconds upon landing a skill, and deal additional damage equal to 350% of your attack upon landing it. Next up, on the fully charged version, which is going to be Phantom Strike, you are going to increase the target's damage received by 30% for 7 seconds upon landing a skill, and deal additional damage equal to 550% of your attack upon landing it, and increase your penetration by 1500 for 7 seconds. Again, you guys, I'm telling you, on Awakening Spam, this is going to be ridiculous. These skills are really strong at max. Next up here on the S2, this is where we get into her strike active, so remember that reset on her cores, but this is going to increase your attack by 35% for 8 seconds, as well as applying blackout for 7 seconds to the target, and you also stun the target for 3 seconds upon landing a skill, guard included. So this is going to be her source of her dot. Now again, I've already mentioned this, blackout, darkness, whatever, makes no sense to me for King. I don't get it, especially this iteration of King. But whatever, we're going to move on from that. It's a great skill nonetheless, but still an odd choice of a dot for me. But hey, it's still relevant, and darkness is still a extremely good dot in general. Now on the S3, she has hyper armor with an interrupt while airborne with a 60% chance to remove the target's super or hyper armor upon landing a hit on a target with either of those armors. So in general, kind of what we've seen with a lot of these characters on these hyper armor skills recently. I've been begging to see a airborne interrupt on this skill in particular. In fact, for those of you in the Discord, when I was brainstorming with the guys what I would like to see on a potential SS King kit, this is something I mentioned I wanted to see on Tornado Kick specifically. So I got what I wanted. Love this skill. Going to be great, I can already tell. Now, on the finisher for her core finisher, we are going to see something we also saw with Yuri. She's going to gain 15% of power and increases attack by 15% for 10 seconds upon using it, and that is pretty much going to be the kit in general. Now, I'm not trying to be biased here, but I am extremely partial to King on this banner when it comes to just the kits in general. Again, time will tell. I'm about to be pulling for both of these characters here momentarily. That'll be in a separate video, just keep that in mind. But when it comes to these characters, I do think that King is just a monster for damage. Time will tell, I could be wrong, but from what I've heard, early word of mouth is this character is already out damaging characters like Kyo, so that pretty much tells you where her damage ceiling might be. So we'll have to wait and see. I'm very curious to check that out for myself, and yeah, trust me, you guys, you're going to be hearing a lot about SS King on this channel going forward. So in the end, should you summon on this banner? It's up to you if you want to pull. These are very solid characters. King especially looks really, really good, but both of them are really good, I think. But again, it's very early, probably too early to tell. I would say that if you want to wait a little bit to see what other people that have pulled these characters think of them once they get them hands on, that would probably be a good option. However, keep in mind, for those of you who are worried, there might be a collaboration in the next month and a half, so always keep that in mind if you're budgeting. But in general, I do think that the value is there, but in the end, it's going to be entirely up to you. I know I'm pulling, but that's because I've been waiting for this lady right here since day one. I've been logging into this game for almost 800 days, if not more than that at this point, waiting for this character. So you know I'm pulling, but whether or not you guys want to do so, again, is going to be largely up to you. I will let you guys know exactly what I think of both of these characters unbiasedly once I get them in my hands, but that is going to have to be for a future video. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, and then we're going to go ahead and call this a video, is if you go over to your event tab, of course, you can go ahead and get these stones for these characters for awakening them. So basically, the first stone here that you're going to be able to see, and I'm not going to be able to see all of them, nor have I seen reports yet because it's so early at this point since this has been dropped. I don't really know what all of the stones do yet, but this one right here for the circle stone this time around is going to increase special signature fighters critical damage. So really good little stone. We'll have to wait and see what the rest of them do once I get these characters characters, I'll let you guys know. But that is going to be the video, you guys. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think of the update, what you think of these characters. Are you hyped for them? Do they meet your expectations? Let me know in the comments section. If you found it informative, smash that like button and subscribe. And if you'll excuse me, I have a king to pull for. Peace.
Continue.